The sun was setting over Avalon International Airport, painting the sky in warm shades of amber as the terminals below buzzed with activity. Travelers hurried through the bustling airport, eager to board their flights and escape to far-off destinations. In the midst of the crowd was James Carter, a tall, well-groomed man in his late 30s, pulling a sleek leather bag behind him. James was an accomplished entrepreneur, known for his brilliant strategies and sharp instincts that had propelled him to the top of the tech world. His journey from humble beginnings to leading a global company was nothing short of extraordinary. But today his thoughts weren't on business. He was drained after a grueling week of meetings that had culminated in a landmark deal, a tech merger that would reshape the landscape of the industry. The deal was signed, the hard work was done, and now James was ready to fly to Geneva to meet with his new leadership team. All he wanted was a peaceful, relaxing flight. He glanced at his boarding pass for what felt like the 100th time, A2 business class. It wasn't his first time flying business, and while first class had its perks, James preferred the blend of comfort and efficiency in business class. As he approached the gate, he noticed passengers ahead of him being warmly greeted by the flight crew, who ushered them onto the plane with practiced ease. When it was his turn, James handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, offering a polite nod. She scanned it and flashed him a smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Carter," she said, returning the pass. With that, he made his way down the jet bridge, stepping into the cool, crisp air inside the plane. At the entrance, a flight attendant in her early 40s greeted him with a professional, though slightly strained smile. Her gaze flickered over him for a moment, and her smile tightened, but she quickly gestured toward the business class cabin. "Good evening, sir. Your seat is just ahead on the left," she said in a tone that was courteous but clipped. James thanked her and found his seat, A2, a spacious leather chair with a glass of sparkling water waiting for him on the armrest. He sighed in relief, stowing his bag in the overhead compartment and settling into the seat. It had been a long week, and the thought of an uninterrupted flight across the Atlantic felt like a gift. He took a sip of water, feeling the cool liquid ease his tension, and pulled out his tablet to catch up on emails. As other passengers trickled in, the atmosphere in the cabin remained calm. James relaxed, allowing the soft hum of the plane's engines to lull him. Just as he was about to close his eyes and drift off, a shadow loomed over him. He opened his eyes to see the same flight attendant standing beside his seat, her smile gone and replaced with an awkward expression. "Excuse me, Mr. Carter," she said cautiously. "May I see your boarding pass again?" James raised an eyebrow, confused. He had already shown his pass at the gate. No one else seemed to be getting the same treatment. Nevertheless, he handed over the pass without hesitation. She looked at it, her eyes darting between the ticket and the seat number, as if trying to make sense of it. She murmured, her brow furrowed. "It seems there's been an issue with your seat assignment." James sat up straighter. "An issue?" he asked. "What kind of issue?" The flight attendant shifted uncomfortably. "It appears this seat wasn't supposed to be available. Due to a system error, it seems we'll need to move you to a different seat in economy class." James blinked, momentarily stunned. "Economy?" he repeated, incredulous. "My ticket says I'm supposed to be here. How could this happen?" Her smile was thin, almost condescending. "I understand, sir, but we need your cooperation. I'm sure you'll still be comfortable." James could feel his frustration rising. He had been in situations before where he felt like an outsider, like he didn't belong in spaces he'd rightfully earned. But this was different. He had paid for this seat, just like everyone else in the cabin. "I'm not moving," he said firmly. "This is my seat, and I intend to stay here." Her expression hardened. "Sir, we really need you to cooperate." James didn't flinch. "If there's an issue, it's not my problem. I'm staying here." A few nearby passengers had begun to take notice of the conversation. Some glanced over, while others deliberately ignored the growing tension. The flight attendant's face flushed, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Please, sir," she insisted. "We don't want to make this more difficult than it needs to be." "I'm not moving," James repeated, his patience thinning. "If there's an error, you can resolve it without downgrading me." The flight attendant sighed and left, returning moments later with a cabin manager in tow. He approached James with the same stiff formality. "Mr. Carter," he said, "we're dealing with a full flight, and unfortunately, your seat was double booked. We'll need to move you to economy." James met his gaze, unimpressed. "So, someone else gets my seat, and I get downgraded? How does that make sense?" The cabin manager hesitated, his professional demeanor faltering. "It's the only solution we have right now, sir." James narrowed his eyes, sensing the underlying tension. He had fought too hard for too long to accept being sidelined now. "I'm not moving," he said calmly, but with finality. The manager opened his mouth to argue, but before he could respond, a younger flight attendant approached, her expression neutral, yet curious. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, glancing between James and the cabin manager. The manager's tone was sharp. "We have a seating issue." The younger attendant took out a tablet and quickly tapped through the passenger list. After a few seconds, she looked up in surprise. "Actually, Mr. Carter is assigned to this seat. There's no mistake." A wave of awkward silence followed as the cabin manager turned red, realizing the so-called error was, in fact, a misunderstanding. "Thank you," James said, his voice calm but firm, as the younger attendant apologized. As the cabin crew dispersed, James leaned back, still simmering but determined not to let the incident ruin his trip. It was a small victory, yet it left a bitter taste. Even after all his success, he still faced moments where he had to prove he belonged. But as the plane took off, James allowed himself to relax, his thoughts shifting to the future. In a few weeks, he would finalize a major acquisition, and the next time he flew, he wouldn't just be a passenger. He'd be a stakeholder in the airline itself. Disclaimer: this content is original, created for the purpose of reflection and dialogue. It stands against all forms of discrimination, promoting equality and respect for all. As the plane cruised over the Atlantic, James Carter sat quietly in his business class seat, reflecting on the earlier tension. Though he had fought to keep his seat, the experience left a lasting impact. It reminded him that success didn't shield him from prejudices, as people still judge him by appearance rather than achievements. Instead of letting frustration take over, James made a decision. This incident wouldn't define him. It reinforced why he worked so hard, not just for personal success, but to pave the way for others facing similar barriers. As he headed to Geneva, he realized his leadership role extended beyond business. It was also about creating inclusive spaces where everyone was treated with respect. This, he knew, would be part of his lasting legacy. Leaning back, James closed his eyes. He wasn't just flying to a meeting. He was stepping into the next phase of his career, determined to make a difference.